That's it.
Yeah, it's working.
Yeah.
All right, peace and blessings, everybody out there. We're about to get this interview done with our brother Shabazz. Minister of Harlem Church of Christ. So Jabari, you've been trying to get with him for how long?
It's got to be about 8 years since we spoke about this, sa.neter.
Right,
About
go ahead.
8 years. It's been a while. Yeah.
Talk to the people. We
I'm
live right
certainly-
now.
I'm certainly familiar with Dr. O.J. Shabazz's work here in the Harlem community. You know, folks, I only live a few blocks away, and so I've seen him preach before. I believe I saw him actually officiate a funeral. Was probably the first time I had seen him. But I'd also seen some things on YouTube, and I said, I want to talk to him about that. I'm not sure if I agree with that. Let's see. So I said it to sa.neter. sa.neter said, sure.
Right, but I didn't really know who
Did
you was
not know
talking
what I was
about.
talking about. So when we spoke last week, I said, sa.neter, didn't I tell you I wanted to talk to him about that? He did not remember. So clearly, this will give us an opportunity. I think that that Dr. Shabazz is doing good work. So this is not a secret. He's doing good work. I mean, there's no way.
How did you feel? How did it hit you when you heard his sermon upstairs when he said something about the African?
He said, you don't understand the Bible if you don't understand African history and culture.
How did that hit you?
I think that there is...
You never heard a pastor say that, brother.
I don't think I have.
I never heard
I
a
think
pastor.
I might have heard someone.
I've
very,
never heard a
very
pastor
early.
say
Listen,
that.
When I was a young man, and considering becoming Muslim, my parents brought a group of, I guess you could call them African-centered pastors to speak to me. And I think that one of those pastors said something very similar. But clearly, I think that there are not many pastors that say that. He is certainly relatively unique in the tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of pastors, of ministers that we see in the black community. It is rare for him to say that. I would push him on some of that.
What you mean?
Because I think that sometimes when we talk about the Bible, we talk about the Bible as it's one book. And I know that we receive it today as one book. But that's not its origin. And so I wonder whether we should assume that what we are reading is entirely ensconced with African history. Well, if what we are reading is entirely in congruence with African history and culture, I would disagree on some of that.
Right.
Not all of it, but some of it. And
Right.
But I do believe that there are some important places. The family has heard me say this before, that we need to talk about those sorts of things. Of course, sa.neter took down so many of his videos. I went to look for one of the videos where I was lecturing on this, and it wasn't on his channel anymore. So definitely, I'm going to want to get a copy of it so I can see exactly how that one went as well.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I met up with Infadiji yesterday on the 125th Street, and the same questions I asked you last week, I asked him. And when I asked him, who do you think, what I said, the Canaanite people are? Was the Canaanite people in modern time?
Yes, who do you think?
And you said you didn't know. You said that's a hard question.
Well, I didn't say I didn't know.
No, you said that's a hard question to
It
answer.
is a hard question.
So I asked him,
Right.
and he answered it. He went in.
Okay.
You know,
Okay.
so you're going to see it. That was
you know,
good.
My position is whenever we're looking at ancient people and we're trying to make a one-to-one comparison with an ancient group and a modern group, that is challenging. Because we know that people move. We know that there are large changes in populations even within a few decades. And we're talking in many ways about thousands of years. So clearly that's a difficult thing to answer. But I would say if we were going to look at it genetically, the folks that probably have the largest percentage of that DNA are people who have lived there for a very long time. And I think the other part of the question you were asking is whether I thought that the Palestinian people would be closest to the Canaanites. That I would agree with.
Right.
Closest
How
to the
come?
Canaanites.
How come when you hear the Hebrew Israelites on the street corner, they always talk about the laws that they have and the laws that they follow in the Bible? How come I never hear the Egyptologist teachers or the Kemetic teachers speak about the laws that you have and the laws that you follow?
I don't know.
Is there a law? No, go ahead, answer that. And then
I don't know if I would agree with that assessment. I mean, obviously, we talk extensively about Ma'at. And Ma'at is clearly illustrated through a number of, let's say, edicts or a number of statements about how one should behave. I mean, you've heard us talk about the 42, sometimes we call them laws, others people call them negative confessions of Ma'at. Clearly, there's an entire group of a body of literature in ancient Kemet that describes how one should live a Ma'atical life. It's called Seba'it literature. I talk about Seba'it literature every Kemetic Ascension. Whenever we are alive, we have a whole section of our spiritual gathering called the Word from the Seba'it. So I think there's a difference between what you might hear many people talk about historically and what other people would talk about practically and spiritually. Usually when I'm on your channel, sa.neter, I am here as a historian, not as much as a Kemetic priest.
Right.
Not as much.
Right.
And so that's the reason why you haven't heard me talk about, well, we say to do this and do that and do this. That is something that you would more hear if you were listening on Kemetic Ascension. And I'm sure that the folks that are part of your channel, there are many members of the Shrine of Ma'at that are also active on your channel.
Is there a law? Okay. Is there a law in Kemetic teachings against homosexuality?
You've asked me this question about 5-6 times over.
Yeah, because that's the number one thing that the Israelites do is they talk about the laws of homosexuality.
I honestly
Thou
say,
shalt not sleep with man as he lie with woman, all of that.
The first thing I would say is, why are we going to that law first? None of the people, you're not homosexual, right. I'm not homosexual. That would be the
reason I'm doing it.
That would be the easiest law for us to live by.
The reason why.
The rest of the laws are the ones that would apply to me and you. And
let me tell you why.
That we are not in divine
balance. The reason is to show these other groups that yes, there are laws against that in ancient
Kemet. Here's the challenge. If we do that, what we are doing is we are flattening our tradition according to the understanding of an outside group.
But you still got to make understanding understood.
Yes, but there's so much better understanding to have. Whenever we're having this conversation, ain't nothing but heterosexual brothers pontificating about people who are gay. And it just doesn't, there's so many other things that we should be talking about. But I will answer your question in part. But I want you to know that we have to talk about the rest of it as well. It's more practical, more important for us to talk about the rest of it. I will say to you that there are many, many edicts about divine balance. And when you read the edicts about divine balance, there is one that people who are practitioners of the Kemetic tradition have argued, discussed, pontificated about for decades. There's one that says man, it's translated sometimes as man should not lay with man's wife or man husband. And there's some people that interpret that as an encomium against same-sex relationships. I'm going to say to you that I don't interpret it that way. Because if you interpret that one rule of the 42 laws of Ma'at in that manner, then there's no description of adultery. And I would think, with all of the descriptions of adultery in Kemetic texts, and there are many, and it's poisonous to relationships, to families. It's poisonousness, it's noxious nature to families. I would honestly say That's what it really refers.
All right, let me get it before he comes in.
Responds to.
Let
Is
me
he here?
ask you this question. I don't know.
If he's here, let's go. Okay.
All right, so let me ask you this question. Infodesi said something to me yesterday that rocked me.
Right.
And I was like, what? Are you serious? In the 18th dynasty with Akhenaten and Queen Nefertiti, when she moved on to the realm of the ancestors and passed on, Akhenaten married his daughter. What's going on here, brother?
I think that we should recognize that the title of wife, and there's several titles for a wife, are important spiritual titles, right?
Right.
And they're also important political titles. It is not unusual to see that one of a king's daughters bore one of those titles. It is a political title.
But Akhenaten marries his daughter?
Here's the deal. I would want you to say, because she bore that title, that does not mean that he was having intercourse or that he had children with her.
Okay.
It's a political title. Just like we in our community have the title of Queen Mother. Was Queen Mother more your mother?
No.
Was she my mother?
No.
Well, what do you mean we calling her mother?
She was the mother of the nation, of the black nation.
This is what I'm trying to say to you.
Right.
It is a political title.
Okay.
And
now
so
see,
that
you make
is
it
the
clear.
way, that's the way we should understand it. Yes.
What is
So
what is the most thing? What is the that you could come up with is the most misunderstood about the teachings of Kemet?
Oh,
I will say one thing
what?
is the number one thing that the Hebrews always attack us on is Geb and Newt.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I don't know if I would say that's the most
Misunderstood. I would say
that's
that
only
is.
if you swimming in waters with a lot of Hebrew Israelites. The reality is that I've been teaching as a priest for over I guess it's been a long time. It's over 15 years now. And I've been a historian that focuses on ancient African history for much longer than that. So I want to say to you that I don't think that that's the most misunderstood piece. I think that some of our Hebrew Israelite brothers are trying to find something that they can make fun of as we talk about the challenges in what they practice and what their tradition is. But I will say to you that in this section of the pool, sa.neter, you're going to hear them mention Geb and others and Newt, and that's okay. I mean, you know, I've answered it many times.
Yes, you did.
I'm going to answer it again because some of those videos aren't up anymore, sa.neter. But let's be very clear: Geb is not a human.
Right.
Geb is the earth. Newt is not a woman in the traditional sense.
So
she is not the earth.
So do you think our brother Tahuti is messing up the teachings when he said these were real deities? These are real people. I say he's making a mistake on that.
Y'all have heard me say this many times. Real does not necessarily mean literal. Real does not necessarily mean literal. So when you say real, there are many things that are real. There are principles that are real. Freedom. Has anyone ever seen freedom, or do we understand what it is? Our ancestors, our direct ancestors, sa.neter, thought freedom was one of the most important things and they would die for it. We have so many different African revolutionaries who, if they were going to lead movements, and then they were if they unfortunately met their end at the hand of our European, our Tombu oppressors, they would die and say they were fighting for freedom, and they would continue to fight for freedom. No one's ever tasted freedom, no one's ever smelled freedom, no one's ever touched freedom, but freedom is very real. So I don't want us to say, is the deity real? I want us to say, is the deity literal? Is the deity a physical manifestation of something? That is where I think people get it wrong.
And that's what Tahuti is saying.
And there are others. Now, I haven't heard him say it.
Physically
real. You talking about Tahuti?
The one that you had the conversation with. Yes.
Yes. Oh, I have heard him say that.
Okay. See.
And I think that is a misunderstanding. It's an unfortunate misunderstanding. I mean, there's so many different ways, just common sense ways that I think that we can say that is insane. I mean, one of them is, okay, so if you're arguing that these deities were literal entities, were physical beings, then why aren't they here now? Are you saying that the deities have left us? Are you saying what happened in the world?
And you know what else is crazy to think about?
By the way, As has the sun on her head.
Are you talking?
Heru has a falcon head. Are you telling me that is what these entities were literally like? Why have we not found any burials of these hybrid beings? We have to stop rendering our tradition in the way that seems familiar based on the traditions that we were forced to practice by our enslavers.
Are you telling me that Asal got chopped up into 14 pieces
and came back to life?
That Ma'at sat on the bird and brought, like, what are you talking about?
I'm gonna tell you this. When I said those things to him, he's a very calm brother. It's interesting. He would just look at me and then say something else. like I didn't even say anything to him. And that was funny, right? Because the reality is those answers those are questions that need to be answered. And if you don't answer them, then we should recognize that what you are saying is likely untrue, that it does not make decent sense. And so that's the reality. Now, if he's trying to say that there may have been people in history that some of these ideas were patterned over, that's not the same thing. That's not.
Let me tell you what Infidisi said. I brought this to him yesterday too. He said, basically, he's saying that during them times, some real people took on the names like we do today, like they got brothers named Tahuti. He's saying, it could have been probably some real people named Asal.
Well, we know that they were.
Yeah, Aset and all them, because they take on the name, the attributes of these people. So he said, I hope he's talking about that, but not the true, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like he agreed with you on that.
That's right. Yeah. And that's because those people were seeking to embody. My Kemetic name is Heru Jeden Ma'at Aten Ra. So I've had several. Heru is one of the chief deities of Kemet. So it is also my name. And so that is how that goes. By the way, people with the name Dennis, you could look at how Dennis is a derivation of Dionysus, which is a derivation of Osiris, which is a derivation of Asar. So let's be clear. There are people who live today. This is one of the things that Dr. Clark used to say. When I first heard it from him, he had me flabbergasted. He said Thomas probably came from Jehutimes. I thought it was fascinating. And he went on this long conversation as to how he was studying it. And I thought it was fascinating. He had me wrapped. It was just me as a young person, relatively young person, sitting at his feet while he sat in a chair much like this one and spoke while stroking his beard. By that time, he had already lost his vision. And I would sit next to him on the floor and he would talk and I would just write. My hands would be sore for days after writing everything I could.
I want y'all to know that this is live. We are live right now. We're waiting on our brother, pastor, minister, OG, Oli Shabazz. We're waiting on him to have a nice, powerful conversation. And I think y'all going to enjoy this one right here. And so, Jabari, as we wait, what else you got to say about the Kemetic teachers?
Well, I think that there's a lot for us to learn. I think that I know you mentioned that the most common misconception was one that surrounded Geb and Newt, but I would say the next question you asked is even more common a misunderstanding, that the Kemetic deities were seen as literal. That is one that you're going to hear regardless of the portions of the community that you're in. You're definitely going to see that. You're going to hear that the Kemetic people worship the dead. You're going to hear we worship the sun. There are many, many misconceptions about Kemetic spirituality. And I'm going to say to you that if you're reading the text, you'll see that those misconceptions can be easily discarded.
What is your what do you think about the pseudo killers? Unc leading the pseudo killers. You got brother Cedric Ortega. You know Cedric.
I do.
What do you think about them? Do you think they are the pseudos for real, or?
I have had so many negative things, so many tiffs with Ankh that I don't even care to mention him at this point. It's just not necessary, right?
But you got to respect his science, though, when it comes to the science. Come on,
most
Jabari.
of the time.
I think
Most
Unc
of the
is
time.
very
most of the time
a very educated brother when it comes to
no
that
one
science.
I would not disagree with that.
Right.
I would not disagree with that. But I would say to you that I think sometimes he might, and he's going to get upset when he sees this.
Yeah.
But it's true. There's nothing I haven't said to him with him in
Right.
in the YouTube room.
Right.
I think that sometimes he assumes that what he's reading in the sciences helps him understand things that he hasn't studied as extensively. And that's my humble description of the challenges that he's in. When we last sat together on your channel, I asked him some questions that he couldn't answer. And I said, the reason why you can't answer that is because you haven't studied this extensively enough. So that's really weird. I'm not questioning his intellectual ability. I think that he's an extremely erudite brother. That's never something that we had a problem with. I just think that he might be talking very often these days about things that he's less familiar with. And so the question I asked him, for example, I said, well, can you talk to me about the 4 periods in Kemetic history where we see the society, the culture, the nation, both politically and spiritually, being put back into order from the most important section of the kingdom? Sometimes people call these the golden eras. I know that's what I usually call it. And he wasn't able to answer that question. He had no idea what I was referring to. I honestly believe that anyone who had studied Kemet extensively would know what I was referring to. And there are these particular periods where we see Kemet being reconstituted from the south. Because Kemet, most importantly, is a nation that was based on its southern region. And so, and we got to that conversation through a bunch of convoluted descriptions about who the Kemetic people were and about their ethnicity or their racial origin according to our modern standards. And so it's not a conversation I look to argue with him about over again. But definitely that's where we got to.
When you hear the word evolution, what does that mean to you? Because when our people hear the word evolution, the first thing that comes to their mind is that we don't come from monkeys. Like, no one ever said that.
No.
But they don't understand the term of evolution.
Right.
Talk to us about that.
I honestly believe that you only hear that in this section of our community.
Yeah.
Most African American people, most Afro-Caribbean people, most people of African descent understand that evolution is a scientific, as close to a scientific fact as we can get. And so I think that most people understand it that way. And I'm going to tell you, sometimes when people are arguing about whether we came from monkeys or not, I try to play with them a little bit and I say, well, according to science, we are still monkeys. You should know that the classification that humans belong in is we belong in large apes, according to science.
Yes,
So
yes.
still,
We are considered apes.
yes.
Great.
We have to understand.
Great apes, right?
Yes. So, I mean, I'm telling them that. I know that that's not what they mean, but it's just to pick at them a little bit.
Right.
The reality is that, no, humans did not come from monkeys. And then which primate are you referring to? Are they referring to gorillas? Are they referring to chimpanzees? I think that what we can say is some of the primates that are in existence and human beings have a common ancestor. And that ancestor is now extinct. So no, we didn't come from monkeys. I think that when they hear that, they misunderstand.
But what is that common ancestor? What does that mean?
It means that humans are now an entity that had earlier entities who, in their genetic diversity, went extinct, and they led to a later primates. But it's hard to even explain it in a way that the layman might understand. But just understand that if you looked at human beings, we have an ancestor that's an amoeba-like entity. We have an ancestor that is closer to what some people try to say are monkeys. When people look, for example, at the model of Dinknesh, who the Europeans called Lucy, they say she's a monkey. She is not a monkey. But they would say that she looks ape-like. If they said that, maybe I might agree. But she is not a monkey. And we can tell you that when we're able to look at archaic DNA and look at modern human DNA, we can say that we share lots of DNA. And I'm going to tell you, chimpanzees and humans share a whole lot of DNA.
98%.
A lot of DNA.
98%, brother.
So let's just understand that.
So what is that 2% difference of? Maybe strength?
I'm not even sure.
Strength, because you know them apes are strong. So I don't know.
I'm going to say this to you. I think that we need to recognize sometimes the people who are disagreeing with that, with evolution, are doing it because of spirituality. And I continually tell people, your spiritual book is not, this is something that Dr. Shabazz said upstairs too. Your spiritual book is not a science book. It is not. And we should not read it that way.
Right.
Your spiritual book is not a history book, and we should not read it that way.
They challenge Unc by saying monkeys have tails. Unc response is humans also have tails, but they fall off in the womb. Talk to us about that, man.
Well, there's a small section of our spine that we could say likely is how our tails actually evolved away from our current being.
Wow, that's crazy. I ain't never seen no tail when you look at a sonogram.
You know, there's children that are still born with tails.
Huh?
They're usually removed.
Oh,
You've never known anyone to be born with a tail?
No.
It used to be embarrassing. So
I've seen some of that.
Parents would not tell you that happened. But it did happen. It does happen sometimes. I'm going to say to you that the tail is an evolutionary development that exists because it assists that entity that still has it. When you look at, for example, a cat, it is now believed that a cat has a tail because when it runs, it helps it retain its balance.
Guys,
right?
yes.
It helps it retain balance.
Exactly. That's the cheetah.
Yeah. When you look at, for example, a chimpanzee or a gorilla, some of those animals have tails because they assist them in climbing. What we would call a monkey today, assist them in climbing. Human beings don't do that very much anymore. We walk upright. We don't run on all fours. And so through evolution, we've lost that tail, the vestigial tail. I mean, that's just the reality. And by the way, if you're looking at this through your spiritual text, understand that none of those spiritual texts are attempting to give you a date. When we try to use dates from our spiritual texts, we get ourselves in lots of trouble. That's how some people begin to say that the world is 6,000 years old and was created on October. We get into ridiculous trouble. Our spiritual texts are supposed to tell us how to live, not how everything came into being and what its substance was and what the changes in those substances were. That is not what our spiritual texts are meant to do, whether we're talking about Kemetic spiritual texts or others. Now, let me say this. That doesn't mean that some of the texts don't have things that we would consider science in them, but to render them as a science book, a history book, gets us into trouble. And that's the major part of what I think we need to understand.
Let me ask you a religious question. Do you see humans as the gods on the earth? Gods? I'll ask you yourself. Do you see yourself as a god?
Well, let me say to you, without being too semantical, I don't tend to use the word God.
Right, but you know what I'm talking about.
What you're trying to say. One of the fundamental tenets of the Kemetic tradition is that we are all divine. So in that sense, if I wanted to smash together ideas so I can give you a clearer answer, the answer would be yes. But I want to be clear that as a portion of the divine, almost like if you took a drop from the ocean and you studied it, you would say, this is ocean water. I think of each of us in that sense. We are the ocean, but not the entire ocean.
Hold up for a minute.
Sure.
Yes, Brother Philip Barnes, that's because, brother, peace and shout out to you. That's because they are hiding my channel. And I don't know how to get that back up and running. That's why you only see 90 people in here when I have over 189,000 subscribers. So yeah, they are hiding my channel. No, Philip said he had to search for my channel. So yeah, that's what they doing, man. They're not being fair with the people.
One of the things you're going to have to do, sa.neter, is you're going to have to start taking people's emails.
And just sending out a blast.
So that you can have direct access and you're not entirely dependent on these media institutions that we know are doing some really bizarre things in this period.
Mm-hmm.
Shadow bans are real.
Yeah.
And so you have to have access to your people in a way that is beyond what they're allowing you to have.
Right.
So if you had their emails, you could send a blast out saying, I'm going to be doing this. Now, I know because you move as fast and as furious as you do, you wouldn't be able to do that at every time. But
one more thing. Another thing, because I spoke to YouTube the day before yesterday. Not spoke to them, voice to voice, but it was through the, going back and forth, chatting. It was through the chat, right, online form. And I brought all of this up to their attention. I asked them, was my channel blocked? What can y'all do to open up my channel? Mm-hmm. And they told me that there's nothing that's on their end. I know they lying, though. They're lying. And so what one of them told me is that unsubscribe from my channel and resubscribe. Unsubscribe from sa.neter Studios and then resubscribe and hit all of the notification buttons, the all. So hopefully that'll work. So do that and then do that on the HOK as well. And then maybe y'all get notified. But that's what they told me to do and just relay that message to you. So break back to this now. Mm-hmm. You said yes. And the short answer, yes, mm-hmm. You do see yourself as a God. But what about the devil? Do you also inherit those traits of being a devil as well? Because we have a higher self. Hold up. Let me make my point. In every being, there's a higher self, a higher Jabari, and there's a lower self, a lower Jabari. Higher and lower, duality and everything. So do you also have the traits of being wicked, of being a devil, if you allow that to come out?
Now, you notice how I started with the disclaimer saying that I don't use the word God?
I know.
I don't believe there is a devil.
Right, but if you're going to use that God, you got to accept the devil.
That's why I'm not using the word God. I'm not doing that. God is not even a Christian term.
No, you unsubscribe, but then you resubscribe.
Right.
That's what he said. That's what I'm telling you. Yeah.
So I would more clearly say, is our brother here?
You come down now.
Okay. I would more clearly say that we're talking about the practice of ma'at, the way of ma'at, and the lack of ma'at mm-hmm. that the Kemetic people call isfet. We don't have a devil in the Christian tradition. And in many African traditions, there's no devil. They're complementary pairs, right? Just like in some ways you could see Asar and Set or Heru and Set as complementary, but one is not the devil. And so that is a concept that really comes from another group of individuals. Now, based on our modern language, would I say that some of us have found ourselves acting in a devilish manner in our common modern parlance? Of course. And I would say that what we have to do is we have to figure out how to live a divinely balanced life. and embraced the call to higher consciousness. And my role as a head-netter in Tepe, in fact, as the chief servant of my shrine, is to try to help people do that. That is the best use of our spiritual traditions. Not to attempt to try to say who's going to hell and who ain't, but to more attempt to assist people to be their best selves, and as I usually describe it, help people stand up when they've fallen down. That's really what I think the best use of our spiritual tradition is. I don't think a lot of people are using it for that way, in that manner. And that's why we have so many problems around spirituality. That's why spirituality, or even religion, has turned off so many people. Because what we end up doing is simply just talking about other groups of people and why they are problematic. And that's not what these traditions were meant to do. None of them. Whether we're talking about Christianity or Judaism or the Kemetic tradition, one of the oldest traditions in the world. Definitely that's not what we're doing.
What do you think about the new movement that's going on now? And they call it the Owaspi. The Owaspi. Now, this is another Bible coming out.
Now, listen, you know I debated the
I know,
Owaspi, brother.
I know.
Is that debate up on your channel?
Yes,
Sa.neter, you
that's
gotta
up there.
Give that to
No,
me.
that's up there. That's up.
Because some of the stuff I've done
that's
is
up there.
not up there anymore.
That is
and
up
I know
there.
Sa.neter was juggling things for the health of his channel. I'm not blaming our brother. But I want to get access to him too, is what I'm saying.
Yes.
I honestly believe that it astounds me how they're going to be upset when I say this, but so be it. How gullible some of our people are. How gullible some of us are. That we are going to follow the words of a dentist from Manhattan. That's what I got to say about it.
This is your spot here,
Yes.
brother.
Hey, man.
Hey, I enjoyed your services, brother.
My apologies. I didn't even
Listen, we're coming to you on what may be your busiest day of the week.
But I promised my brother that I would set 1 o'clock following.
Right.
And I just got off track. And
I enjoyed your services, man.
Thank you,
You really dropped some real heavy stuff, brother.
Thank you, man. I
Yes, sir.
appreciate it. I
Yes, sir.
appreciate it. See you guys. See you later. Okay.
All right, y'all, I got to go. We getting ready to get it in right now. We getting ready to get it in. I'll talk to y'all. Peace.
Looking sharp in that hat too, Elder.
Thank you, sir. That's my armor bearer right here.
Yeah, looking sharp in that hat.
He's a good brother.
All right.